Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into one of the most fragrant corners of history you never knew existed. An ancient garden hidden in the heart of the Aztec Empire, where flowers weren't just grown for beauty, but to lull the gods to sleep. No, seriously. Imagine a culture where blossoms were bred not for perfume, not for potpourri, not even for overly dramatic breakups, but for the sole purpose of helping divine beings get some quality shut-eye. You're about to wander into that exact garden. And spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in their compost pile. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment. Where are you listening from and what time is it there? Midnight in Manila, dawn in Denmark? Let me know. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk through a low stone arch, slick with the morning's dew. The sky is still purple, like a bruise just beginning to heal, and everything around you smells like wet earth and crushed leaves. The garden is quiet, but not silent. There's the delicate sound of petals brushing against each other, in the breeze the distant coo of birds just waking up, and somewhere the faint tinkling of water dripping from leaf to leaf. It's not just a garden, it's a temple without walls. You're barefoot, everyone is here. No shoes allowed, not because it's some trendy wellness thing, but because the gods might be napping just beneath the soil. Step too hard, and you'll jolt a divine dreamer from their slumber. And trust me, you do not want to be the reason Tezcatlipoca wakes up cranky. This garden, tucked inside the sacred capital of Tenochtitlan, was once known only to a few, a secret space wrapped in layers of vines and guarded by dragonflies the size of your hand. They say each plant here was selected not for color or flavor, but for how it might affect a dreaming god. Some flowers cooled the mind, others whispered stories through their scent. A few were rumored to sing lullabies. If you listened hard, enough and held your breath just right, you pause beside a bush of delicate white blossoms, their petals soft like folded linen. The gardener beside you nods solemnly and gestures for you to inhale. You do, and instantly the world seems heavier, slower. Your knees wobble, your eyelids sink like anchors. "Flower of sleep," he murmurs, as though saying its name too. Loud might knock you out cold. Aztec botanists, though no one called them that, weren't just planting pretty things. They were studying dreams, and not the "oops, I'm late to class and forgot my pants" kind. These were dreams believed to carry messages, visions, even prophecies. Gardens were portals, sleep was sacred, and if a flower bloomed at the wrong time, it was considered a bad omen, like your horoscope telling you to avoid mangoes and legal documents for a week. Some nights, they say, the wind itself would gather the scent of blooming fields and carry it straight up the steps of the great temple, where gods curled into the sky's folds listening. Of course, some historians still debate whether the gardens were truly for the gods, or just a poetic way of explaining advanced agricultural rituals. But come on, you're standing here, surrounded by petals so soft they feel like whispers, and you can't help but believe that something divine once napped here. You move deeper into the garden. A low mist curls around your ankles, cool and sticky. Ferns bow as you pass, and thick ropes of honeysuckle hang like sleepy snakes from wooden beams above. It feels like the plants are watching you, not with suspicion, but with that slow, patient awareness of someone who knows how long eternity really is. And then you find it. A small clearing, just earth, no flowers, no vines, just a patch of perfect dark soil. The gardener gestures again, this time kneeling. You follow. Your fingertips brush the dirt, and it's warmer than the rest, like a sunbeam, buried underground. They say this is where Tlaloc dreamed the rain, the gardener says softly. Before the storms, before the rivers, he dreamt it all right here. You want to ask how he knows, but part of you already does. You feel it, in your bones, in the ache behind your eyes, in the way the air trembles just a little every time. You breathe too deep. You sit back on your heels, close your eyes. And in the quiet hum of the garden, you start to wonder, if gods have dreams, then what are you doing inside them? The petals around you begin to stir, though no breeze touches your face, and somewhere, just beyond the curtain of green, something exhales. A god? A dream? A memory? Maybe all three. But there's no going back now. You've stepped into sacred soil, and the flowers have noticed. The first thing you feel is the heat, low and steady, like the breath of a sleeping animal pressed to your skin. You're deeper into the garden now, and it no longer feels like a place people visit. It feels like something alive, like it wants to keep you here. You pause beneath a canopy of vines that shimmer like threads of obsidian in the rising light. The path curves in gentle waves, lined with volcanic stones arranged in spirals, ancient designs meant to confuse evil spirits or nosy Spaniards, depending on who you ask. Just ahead you see him, the elder gardener. His back is bent not from age but from reverence. He's whispering as he works, his hands moving slowly over a patch of spiky blue blossoms. Not touching, never touching. Just coaxing them open with breath and intention. You crouch beside him, careful not to snap a twig or sneeze or otherwise insult the entire pantheon. He doesn't look up, just says, "These were Quetzalcoatl's favorite. He once turned into the morning wind just to smell them blooming." You blink. The god of wind and knowledge cared about flowers. The gardener smiles without teeth. Only the clever gods understand softness. And then he leans in and tells you a story, quietly as though the petals themselves might shush him. Long ago, when the world was younger and less cynical, Quetzalcoatl wandered the earth in human form. He carried no weapons, wore no crown, and spent his days walking among the people. He taught them poetry, calendars, agriculture, and oddly enough, the art of growing fragrant things. He said flowers were a kind of alphabet for the soul. Legend says he once spent 7 days in a valley filled with sleeping flowers. Not a single bloom opened, until he began to hum. One by one they stirred, stretching toward the sound, and when he left, they kept humming. That song? It's what you now call wind. Of course, some modern scholars argue the whole thing's symbolic, metaphor for the introduction of horticulture to central Mexico. Blah blah. But standing here, smelling the blue flowers open like little jars of honey and ash, it's hard to imagine anything less than a god's breath being responsible. You try humming. Just once. A low, cautious note that curls from your lips like steam from a morning cup of cacao. And for a moment, just the briefest beat of time, the flowers seem to lean toward you. Coincidence? The gardener nods, as if he's seen it too. Sometimes the gods leave echoes, he says. They wait for someone who still knows how to listen. You press your fingers to the edge of a leaf. It's soft but veined with threads of gold. Not real gold, some kind of pollen. And as it brushes your skin, you feel a sharp burst of memory. A face. Yours? No. Someone else. A child holding a bowl of water. A song playing in a language you don't know. It passes. Like a dream slipping out the back door of your mind, you sit back, rattled in a way you don't fully understand. The gardener doesn't comfort you. He just moves to the next plant, whispering. "Not every dream is meant for you," he says. "But sometimes they pass through." You follow him to a raised bed of marigolds. These are different, fatter, brighter, edged in a color that doesn't have a name. You reach for one and he stops you. "Those are for the sleeping ones," he says. "Sleeping people? Sleeping gods." You nod as if that makes sense. Maybe it does. He tells you that these marigolds are planted along a precise lunar rhythm. Their roots are turned not by the sun but by the pull of dreams. He claims, completely straight-faced, that if planted wrong they scream. You laugh and then realize he didn't. "Just once," he says. "But the sound is still growing. Inside me." You don't ask what that means. You already suspect the answer won't be helpful. Instead, you ask why the flowers were so important. Why bother with petals and perfumes when your civilization had pyramids and obsidian blades? He leans in close, his eyes milky but alert. Because pyramids end, blades break, but a single flower in a god's dream? He taps your chest. That lasts longer than any stone. That's when you notice the bees, not buzzing, not swarming, just hovering, perfectly still. One lands on your shoulder, stares at you like it knows your browser history, and drifts away. Another lands on the elder's hand and stays there like an old friend. He doesn't flinch. Just whispers, "They remember him." You're not sure who he means, Quetzalcoatl, the bee? You? Honestly, at this point, you've stopped trying to untangle it. Instead, you watch the flowers breathe. You listen to the leaves shifting. And for the first time in a long while, you feel like the world isn't trying to rush past you. It's just waiting, quietly, for something to bloom. The sun is rising higher now, casting light through the woven canopy like golden threads stitched into a quilt of green. The garden is warmer, heavier, almost drowsy. It feels like the entire place is rocking gently, as if cradled in a slow, ancient lullaby. You trail behind the elder gardener, feet brushing fallen petals that crunch softer than sand. He leads you to a circular plot at the heart of the garden, where the soil is a rich black, darker than the rest, like it's been infused with secrets. These are the dream seeds, he says, not quite whispering, but not bold enough to say it out loud either. You look closer. No flowers here, just neat rows of budding stems, tight-coiled, hesitant. The plants seem to pulse in time with your breath, and you suddenly feel self-conscious, like your lungs are being judged by horticulture. They don't open in sunlight, the gardener says. Only in sleep. You raise an eyebrow. Yours. Or theirs, he smiles. Yes, this section of the garden is for those who plant not with their hands, but with their dreams. The Aztecs believed that flowers could carry messages into the sleep world, like tiny mail carriers for the subconscious. You didn't just grow these blossoms, you communed with them. And only after days of meditative sleep, fasting and staring, at moving water until it winked back at you, would the seeds finally bloom. According to the stories, well, the less tourist-friendly ones, these flowers didn't bloom into petals, they bloomed into visions. Entire dreams sprouting from the soil, shimmering like heat waves, visible only to those attuned enough to see between the seconds. You kneel beside a patch. The stems twitch slightly as you exhale. They seem to respond. And then, for the briefest flicker, you see a shimmer in the air above them, like someone turned the world into old VHS static. Did you see that? You whisper. The gardener doesn't respond. Instead, he lies down beside the patch, folding his arms across his chest, like a man preparing for sleep or death or maybe something in between. You want them to bloom? He asks. You nod slowly. Then sleep. You laugh, thinking he's joking. He doesn't blink. I'm not tired, you start to say, but mid-sentence, your jaw cracks open in a yawn so wide it feels like your entire skull is stretching. The earth is warm beneath you. The air is thick with the scent of crushed basil, wet bark, and something metallic, like rain on a copper roof. So you lie down. The stems rustle faintly beside you, as if repositioning themselves. You close your eyes and you dream. You're walking through a hallway lined with feathers, not hanging, growing. Blue, green, and iridescent black plumes shimmer along the walls like living wallpaper. You reach out and touch one. It hums. Then a figure appears, tall, faceless, wrapped in vines. He carries a bouquet, not of flowers, but of stars. He places one gently at your feet and says in a voice older than stone, "The gods don't always sleep to rest. Sometimes they sleep to listen." You jolt awake, you're back in the garden. The gardener is still lying beside you, snoring softly like a contented boulder. But something has changed. The dream plants are blooming. No color you've seen before, like someone invented a new hue and forgot to give it a name. The air around them shimmers faintly, like heat rising from hot stone. You sit up, and for a moment you swear you hear voices, not speech, more like memory, more like the size of beings too vast to fit into language. You reach out toward one bloom and your hand tingles as it passes through what feels like mist, but leaves your palm dry. Some say these dream flowers were used in rituals by a group of temple gardeners who also served as priest oracles. They'd sleep beside their crops, enter trance states and return with visions, some prophetic, some mundane. One time I saw a jaguar make soup, one priest supposedly confessed. I think it means we should plant more beans. Modern scholars argue these dreams were induced by psychoactive herbs, but again, standing here in a garden that smells like mystery and pollen, it's easier to believe the gods just like to plant ideas while napping. The gardener sits up slowly, looks at the blooms, nods. They liked you. You sure, you ask? They didn't bite you, he says. That's usually a good sign. You're not sure he's kidding. You walk away from the patch, but not before turning back one last time. The blooms are already starting to fade, curling inward like they've shared their secrets and need to recharge. You get it. Even visions need naps, and somewhere inside you, maybe in the part that still smells the feather-lined hallway, you feel something settling, like a seed, not ready to bloom, not yet, but dreaming all the same. The air shifts again, cooler now, as if the garden itself has inhaled and is holding its breath. The elder gestures for you to follow him toward a raised platform nestled beneath thick fig trees, their roots curling around stone like sleeping serpents. As you climb the mossy steps, he leans in and says, "This is where the gardeners stopped being just gardeners." The platform isn't large, just wide enough for a few mats, a small fire pit, and several stone bowls filled with what looks like colored dust. You kneel beside one and scoop a pinch between your fingers. It smells like flowers, yes, but also like charcoal and something vaguely meaty. He watches you closely. "You've heard of the clamatini, yes?" You nod vaguely, pretending. The truth is you've heard the word before, but always in the background of some dusty documentary or footnote of a museum plaque. "Wise men," someone once translated. "Philosophers." Here, though, they were much more. The gardener explains that in this part of the garden, only the clamatini were allowed, not because they were smarter, not because they were priests, but because they were the only ones who could sleep and wake and sleep again without losing themselves. They knew how to water the roots of a dream without drowning in it, he says, drawing a spiral in the dirt with his finger. Each night, these garden philosophers would lie among the flowers, inhaling mixtures of crushed blossoms, sacred tobacco, and a rare paste made from the wings of specific moths. Yes, moths, because apparently their powder carried moonlight, or dreams, or maybe just impressive branding. Their goal wasn't simply rest, it was entrance. They believed that through cultivated sleep, one could enter the realm of the gods, not as a visitor, but as a gardener, tending to the deities' inner landscapes. Of course, not everyone made it back. Some would wake screaming, unable to speak for days. Others wouldn't wake at all, eyes wide open, heart still beating, but mind trapped somewhere between scent and silence. The gardener picks up one of the bowls, offering it to you. "Smell." You hesitate. "Will I fall asleep?" He shrugs. "If you're lucky." You do it anyway. It's earthy and floral, with a back note of burnt sugar and lightning. Your eyes sting for a moment, then clear. You feel like you've licked a thunderstorm. He laughs. "That one's for clarity." You nod, eyes watering. "I'm very clear now." He sets the bowl down and points toward a cluster of reeds growing in a shallow pool nearby. They sway gently, though there's no wind. "That's where the sleep chants were sung," he says, "not to lull the gods, but to help them dream of us." You frown. Why would they dream of humans? Because that's how we stay real. You sit with that for a while, watching the water ripple in soft concentric circles as if someone invisible has just stepped into the pool. The reeds hum faintly, faux sound that could almost be mistaken for singing. And here's the part no one likes to admit. Not all of these dream rituals were passive. Some gardeners, especially those desperate for answers, attempted to seed the gods' dreams, to plant ideas, desires, warnings. It wasn't just dangerous, it was blasphemous, and yet some did it. Laid down in the garden with flower ink smeared on their palms, whispering pleas into the soil, hoping a god would dream of their sick child, or their village's drought, or just that they might be seen. Did it work? Well, one legend tells of a man who dreamt himself into the hands of Xochiquetzal, the goddess of beauty and fertility. He asked her to restore life to his barren field. She agreed, on the condition that he never plant anything but flowers. Again, he accepted. To this day, his descendants still harvest nothing but petals. Of course, historians say it's all allegory, some ancient parable about agriculture and divine order. But then again, you just sniffed divine moth powder and saw a shimmer in the air, so maybe give the old legends a little slack. The gardener rises, slow and creaky, and gestures for you to stand. You do. The platform feels different now, like something beneath it has stirred. They say if you lie here long enough, he murmurs, you'll hear a god murmur your name in their sleep. And if you don't, he shrugs, then you become the next flower. You both laugh, but his lasts just a second too long. You descend the platform, the air is warm again. The flowers sway around you, but now they feel less decorative, more like witnesses. One bloom, tall violet with petals like silk knives, brushes your arm as you pass. It leaves a tingling warmth, like a small promise. You don't look back. You don't want to know if it's still watching, because somehow you already know that it is. There's a hush in the garden now, not from silence, but from something deeper. Reverence, maybe, or anticipation. The kind of stillness right before a confession. You follow the elder into a narrow path lined with high hedges of flowering cactus, their red blossoms pulsing like hearts left out in the sun too long. He walks slowly now. Some flowers, he says, don't grow without a little persuasion. You blink. Like singing to them? He doesn't answer right away. Just hums a low tune that rumbles through the soles of your feet. The path opens into a small courtyard, half shadowed, half sunlit, like a room unsure if it wants to wake up. At its center sits a stone basin filled with thick, dark earth. Around it, arranged like clock points, are small ceramic bowls, some empty, some holding dried petals, others holding something else. The smell hits you first. Not bad exactly, but metallic, sharp, like rust and wet stone. This, the elder says, is where we feed the Xochitl blood. You glance at the basin. You mean fertilizer? He sighs. Sort of. He picks up a bowl and tilts it, letting a single dried flower fall into his palm. The bloom is small, fragile, but its color, an impossible red, seems almost to glow. This only blooms when it tastes life. You know what's coming. But still you ask, whose life? He meets your gaze without blinking. Ours. It wasn't a sacrifice in the way you might think. No altars, no hearts ripped from chests, no flutes made from femurs. No, this was gentler, more intimate. The gardeners would offer a small cut, a fingertip, a palm, sometimes the soft inside of an arm. Just enough for the flower to remember you, they'd say. Just enough to make it grow with your name in its petals. You swallow, unsure how to feel about gardening that bites back. The elder continues. Some of these flowers were planted for the gods to nap with. Others, they were meant to wake them, to jolt them from long sleep when something needed fixing. You raise an eyebrow. Like an alarm clock. Exactly. A blood-scented, petal-covered divine alarm clock. He gestures to the basin. This flower, Xochitl Tetlani, was grown only during times of imbalance, drought, eclipse, war. It didn't bloom pretty, but it screamed, and the gods heard it. You inch closer. Did it work? He pauses. Well, we're still here. Fair point. The elder dips a small twig into the basin, swirling the soil. It releases a scent like cinnamon and smoke. The trick, he says, was always knowing which god to wake, and when. Apparently, waking the wrong one could lead to some, let's say, dramatic consequences. One legend tells of a gardener who tried to rouse Tezcatlipoca with a rare midnight bloom. The god did awaken, only to knock over an entire mountain in a fit of sleep-deprived rage. Moral of the story, don't poke sleeping chaos gods with pollen. You stare at the flower bowls again. So why do it at all? Why risk it? He exhales. Because sometimes the only thing worse than an angry god is an absent one. It makes a strange kind of sense. The Aztecs didn't separate their deities from daily life. The gods were in everything. In the soil, the scent, the headache you got from too much chili. To ignore them was dangerous, but to forget them, unforgivable. And so the gardeners gave their skin, their blood, their dreams, not out of duty, but out of love. A love so rooted in ritual it sprouted flowers. Some scholars now believe these blood flowers weren't literal, but symbolic, representing sacrifice in the form of labor, time, or memory. But again, you're standing here, in front of a bloom that hums when you breathe on it. So maybe don't be too quick to rewrite the metaphors. The elder picks up a thorn from a bowl beside the basin. It's long, narrow like obsidian glass. You can try, he says, if you want the flower to know you. You hesitate. Your thumb twitches. You think about vaccines, paper cuts, ex-girlfriends who said you weren't emotionally available, and then you nod. He pricks your finger with expert precision. A single drop falls into the soil. You wait. Nothing happens. Then, the flower stirs. Just a little. Its petals flutter like a breath being drawn, and then, barely perceptible, it opens. Just enough to show its heart. Inside, not seeds, but a shimmer of light, not bright, not blinding, just soft, as if for a moment the flower is remembering you. You step back, dizzy. The elder pats your shoulder. Now it will tell the gods you exist, he says. Just in case they forgot, you nod slowly. And for the first time today, you feel. Seen not by people, not by history, but by something older, something dreaming. The garden narrows again. The light dimming as high stone walls rise on either side, their surfaces etched with vines and glyphs, carvings so old they seem more grown than engraved. The elder leads you with sure steps, the air cooling with each pace as though you're descending into the lungs of something ancient and still breathing. You pass beneath a low arch, ducking your head instinctively. Beyond it, the space opens into a wide, circular clearing ringed by a dense wall of trees. This is no longer a place for planting. It feels hidden, set apart. The elder raises a finger to his lips. You follow him in silence. At the center of the clearing is a small patch of earth, tilled and empty, but surrounding it are dozens, no hundreds of butterflies, black ones, silent, slow-winged, drifting lazily above the ground like bits of burnt paper, refusing to fall. They're drawn to what's missing, he says softly, not what's here. You stand very still. He calls this place the Xochicanahua, the garden's mouth, and according to legend, this is where the flowers no longer bloom in sunlight or moonlight, or even with blood. These, he says, require silence, secrets, and sleep. You don't move, but you can feel something shifting behind your eyes, the way the silence presses into your ears, like cotton soaked in memory. The butterflies land on the soil, folding their wings like prayer hands. The elder watches them carefully. We call them the listeners. You glance at him. Listeners of what? He doesn't answer immediately. Just kneels at the soil and begins to draw a spiral with his thumb. You notice now that his thumb bears a faint scar, perfectly circular, as though a single drop of him once lived in this patch. They say if you plant a truth here, he murmurs, a flower will grow that remembers it. You crouch beside him. What kind of truth? He meets your eyes. The kind you can't tell anyone, the kind that hurts if it stays, or hurts more if it leaves. You stay silent, unsure if you even have such a truth, but the garden seems to think you do. The butterflies shift just slightly all at once. You feel their wings move like wind against your skin, though they never touch you. Their silence is not emptiness, it's listening, and suddenly you understand. This is the garden's memory, the space where dreams went to bury their roots when they could not be spoken aloud. A place of unspoken prayers, of names whispered only in grief, of regrets too soft for confession. Some say this part of the garden bloomed for a single season and never again. The flowers that once grew here had no petals, only scent, so powerful it could make a man sob just inhaling. Others claim these were the forbidden blossoms, the ones planted by gardeners who had betrayed the gods and whose punishment was to grow nothing but absence. Why are the butterflies black, you ask? They were once flowers, the elder replies, but the gods couldn't bear to forget them, so they gave them wings. You blink. That's horrifying. He shrugs, also poetic. You both sit in the stillness for a while. The butterflies drift. The spiral in the soil deepens with each motion of his thumb. And then, without thinking, you speak. Not a secret, not a sin, but a memory. A face. A scent. Something you've carried for years, tucked away so deep even you had forgotten where it lived. The butterflies pause, the air thickens, and then the soil pulses, not violently. Just a slow heartbeat beneath your palm. The spiral fills in softly, as though the earth itself has accepted your offering, and you realize you've just planted something, not a seed, but a shadow of yourself, a version of you that only the gods and maybe the butterflies will remember. The elder doesn't speak. He stands slowly, brushes soil from his hands and nods. "It's done," he says. "It will bloom when it's ready." You follow him from the clearing, the butterflies slowly resuming their drift behind you. You feel lighter, not healed. Not absolved, but understood. And for the first time you realize this garden isn't about flowers, it's about remembering what the world wants you to forget. One petal at a time. The light is different now, less gold, more blue. That late morning hue that comes when the sun is strong, but the world still hasn't decided whether to be hot or kind. The elder leads you along a winding path lined with smooth stones, their surfaces worn down by centuries of bare feet and soft rituals. The garden shifts again, and now you're not sure if you're outdoors or somewhere in between, like the border between a temple and a dream. You reach a small glade where the plants are low and neat, arranged in perfect squares and circles. It's almost geometric, too precise to be wild, too organic to be mechanical. There's an order here, a pattern, and in the center, a single plant with wide, dark leaves and a flower shaped like a closed eye. These are the sentinel blooms, the elder says. They were not made to sleep with the gods. They were made to watch over them. You squint. Like guardians? He nods. Even gods need rest, and sometimes, while they sleep, things crawl into the spaces where dreams live. You raise an eyebrow. Like nightmares, or ideas, he says. Some gods dream of fire, others of hunger, and some dream of forgetting they are gods at all. You stare at the flower, it doesn't move, doesn't sway, it simply is. And you can't shake the feeling that it's staring back even though it has no face. These were placed around temples, under beds carved for the gods, along riverbanks where divine beings were said to bathe their thoughts, the elder continues. They don't bloom, they don't wilt, they endure. You crouch beside one. Its scent is barely there, just a whisper of smoke and stone. You inhale, and for a moment your thoughts stutter, like a skipped frame, a flicker of forgetting. Then everything comes rushing back. "What was that?" you ask, breathless. "They reflect," the elder says. "Whatever you bring near them, they hold up like a mirror, and if you're not ready to see it..." He lets the sentence hang, like the last note of a warning bell. You look at the flower again. The air around it is perfectly still, as if even the wind is careful not to disturb its meditation. He tells you that in the time of droughts, when priests feared the gods had turned their backs, these flowers were consulted, not for answers, but for signs. A petal twitch meant the god was dreaming. A leaf drooping meant the god was fading. A bloom that curled inward entirely, the god was gone. Did that ever happen, you ask? He hesitates. Once, during the time of the great eclipse. The flower died, and 3 days later, so did the emperor. You sit with that. There's something haunting about a flower that measures faith. That doesn't beg for attention or light, but simply waits, unblinking. They say only one person ever tried to grow one outside a temple, the elder adds. A woman, a widow. She planted it beside her son's bed when he fell into a fever dream. She prayed not to the gods, but to the flower. You wait, she lived, he says. Her son didn't. The flower never bloomed again. Some scholars now think the story was invented, that the flower was just a symbol, an embodiment of vigilance or grief. But here, in this garden, it's hard not to imagine it pulsing with quiet awareness. You reach for it, carefully, and hover your hand just above the petals. Nothing. And yet, your mind starts to drift. Not asleep, not awake. You remember moments from your childhood, a smell you haven't thought of in years, the sound of a spoon against a ceramic bowl, a voice humming. You blink, and it's gone. The elder nods. It let you near. That's good. It means it doesn't fear you. That's oddly flattering. You stand slowly, brushing dust from your knees. Around you, the other sentinel blooms seem to shift slightly, as if realigning themselves. as if acknowledging your presence. You wonder what they've seen over the centuries, what dreams they've stood guard over, what nightmares they've quietly swallowed whole. You'll find them again, the elder says, once you've left here, not always in gardens, but in places where silence gathers, where something old is resting. You nod, not fully understanding, but understanding enough. And as you step away from the flowers, you don't look back, you don't have to. You know they're still watching. You leave the sentinel blooms behind, though a piece of you stays there, watched, remembered. The garden path becomes softer now, layered with fallen petals that cushion your steps. They're so thick in places, it feels like walking on old silk or the forgotten lining of a royal cloak. The elder doesn't speak, and neither do you. There's a reverence in the air. Not silence, softness. A quiet woven with purpose. You round a bend and find yourself before an enormous slab of stone, partially swallowed by vines. But the vines don't seem like invaders. They're arranged in delicate loops, curling around the carvings rather than over them, as if they too are reading. This is the flower wall, the elder says. Every plant here traces its roots back to this place. You step closer. The carvings are deep, intricate. Not words, but images. Dozens of flowers, each unique. Some simple, some impossible, as if dreamed rather than drawn. Between them, small lines connect the blossoms like constellations. You reach out to touch one, but the elder gently stops your hand. Not yet, he murmurs. This wall listens before it allows remembering. You lower your arm. What does it say? He smiles. That's the thing. It doesn't say, it sings, but only if you know how to listen with your breath. You exhale, slowly, and for a moment the wall feels warm beneath your skin. He explains, this stone once stood near the great temple of Tlaloc, the god of rain, fertility, and, curiously enough, dreams. It was used by the ancient gardeners as a ledger, not of transactions but of emotions. Each flower symbol represented a dream offered to the gods. A bloom drawn here meant it had been planted, dreamt, and accepted. See this one? He points to a blossom shaped like a spiral sun. That was offered by a woman who lost 5 children. She planted this flower so Tlaloc would hold them in his sleep. You stare at it. The lines are faint now, almost vanishing into the stone. Yet somehow it still pulses. Next to it is a flower shaped like a jaguar's eye. A warrior's dream, the elder says. He asked the gods not for victory, but for peace when he no longer could fight. Your fingers itch to trace the sedum carvings, to feel the grooves time has refused to erase. The wall is less monument, more memory. Each line a whisper, then he gestures to a blank patch. Here, he says, you can make yours. Your heart thumps. I don't know how to carve. You protest, he shrugs. You don't need a chisel, just a moment. He hands you a smooth piece of flower stone, flat, palm-sized, warm. Hold it. Think of the dream you haven't dared plant. You grip it gently and everything stills. You don't have a vision, no divine light, no voice from above, but you feel something pass from you into the stone, a flicker, a breath, a piece of longing shaped like a bloom. You place the stone against the wall. The vines near it shift ever so slightly as if recognizing the offering. The elder nods. Now your dream waits among theirs. Some say this entire practice was symbolic, a therapeutic tool for grief, a primitive form of psychological healing. But scholars forget, the Aztecs didn't separate healing from holiness. To dream was to speak to gods. To carve that dream in stone was to commit it to the universe. You turn away, leaving your mark among the ancient lines. As you do, the elder recites something under his breath. A poem, a prayer. May your flower open only when the dream is ripe. May it be forgotten by men and remembered by gods. You don't know what to say, so you say nothing, and let the wall remember for you. The path away from the flower wall winds downhill, sloping gently as if guiding you into a deeper layer of the garden, deeper in time, deeper in breath. The air changes again, cooler now, with a scent like damp bark and crushed mint. You hear the faint rush of water before you see it, a narrow stream cutting through the garden, its surface glassy and still, like it's trying to hold on to every reflection. At its edge stand a row of children, barefoot, silent, each holding a tiny pouch made from woven reeds. Their faces are calm, not the eager curiosity of children playing, but the practiced solemnity of ritual. You stop beside the elder, watching. They're called Xochimani, he whispers, seed bearers. You nod slowly. They're so small. He replies without smiling. The seeds are smaller. He explains, each of these children is chosen not for strength or intellect, but for their dreams. Not their ambitions, not their goals, literally their dreams. Once a cycle, each child is asked what they see when they sleep. If they remember visions of rivers, birds, or strange flowers, they are selected, not to be priests, not warriors, but gardeners of the gods. The stream is fed by a hidden spring said to be blessed by Calciutlique, the goddess of lakes, rivers, and childbirth. It is from this water that the children must soak their seeds, not in haste, not in bulk. One seed, one pouch, one dream. A girl steps forward. She kneels beside the water, opens her pouch, and tips in a single seed, no larger than a grain of sand. The stream accepts it without a ripple. You lean in, whispering to the elder, "What kind of flower will it become?" He tilts his head. "We won't know for years." You blink. "That long?" "Some dreams take time," he says, "especially the true ones." The children are quiet throughout the process. Each one takes their turn, kneeling, offering, waiting. Not a word is spoken, not a command given. No one forces them. No one tells them how to stand or when to go, and somehow it's perfect. You watch a boy with a crooked braid drop his seed into the stream. He closes his eyes as he does it, lips barely moving. When he stands, you swear you see something flash under the surface, a shimmer like starlight skimming across the water. It's gone before you can say anything. The elder notices. "That one," he says softly, "planted a memory." His own, his mother's. You feel your throat tighten. "They believe that water remembers," the elder continues. "That it carries stories the way wind carries scent. So the children give their seeds to the river, not just for the soil, but for the journey." You nod, eyes still on the stream. "Where does it go?" He points downstream. "To the center of the garden, where all the dreams root." You stare after it. You can't see where the water ends, but somehow you know it's far, beneath vines, under temples, maybe even inside mountains. He tells you that in old times, if a child's seed bloomed brightly, the elders would take it as a sign. Sometimes the child was invited to become a Tlamatini. Sometimes they were left alone. Why left alone, you ask? Because not every dream should be harvested. You feel the weight of that. You think about your own childhood, your dreams, the ones you chased, the ones that dissolved when you got older and forgot how to look sideways at the stars. And then, without quite deciding to, you kneel at the stream. The water is cool against your skin. You don't have a pouch, no reed-woven bag, but in your pocket somehow there's a petal, one that fell earlier, faintly blue, soft like sleep. You place it gently on the water's surface. It floats for a heartbeat, then it sinks, no splash, no sound, just a slow descent, like a dream falling back into its body. The elder says nothing. The children say nothing, but you feel it. Your dream has joined the current, and somewhere ahead, in the hidden root heart of the garden, it will grow or not. But either way, it has been planted. You rise from the stream's edge, knees damp, mind hushed. The water continues on without you, winding quietly beneath broad-leafed plants and low-hanging branches heavy with moisture. You're not sure how long you stand there watching it go. Long, enough maybe for something inside you to unclench. The elder taps your shoulder. "So there's one more place you need to see." He leads you down a narrow path that coils like a serpent through the underbrush. The further you walk, the more the plants seem to lean in, not in menace, but in familiarity, like they've seen you before, maybe in another dream. At the path's end stands a low, flat building, barely more than a mound of earth draped in flowering vines. You wouldn't have noticed it if he hadn't pointed it out. "This is the House of Forgotten Blooming," he says, "where the flowers that failed to grow were laid to rest." You pause at the threshold. "You bury them?" "Not all," he replies, "only the ones that tried." He pushes open a thick reed curtain. The interior is dim, lit only by beams of sunlight sneaking through woven holes in the ceiling. The scent inside is unfamiliar: wood smoke, old paper, and something bitter. Not unpleasant, just unresolved. Lining the floor are hundreds of shallow clay dishes. Inside each, dried petals, curled leaves, or in some cases nothing at all. Each one has a name inscribed into the rim. These, he says, are the dreams. That didn't take. You kneel beside one, gently turning the dish. The name is barely legible, worn by time or maybe grief. The contents are strange. A single dried stem, no bloom. You glance up. Why keep them? He crouches beside you. Because the act of dreaming still mattered, even if nothing ever grew from it. He tells you that in Aztec thought, failure wasn't a curse. It was an offering, a lesson for the gods, a sign that a dream had been attempted and that effort had been made in good faith. Some people planted things they weren't ready to grow, he says. Some offered dreams too heavy for the soil. You run your fingers along another dish. A few have tiny charcoal sketches scratched into the base. A mountain, a hand, a weeping eye, symbols maybe, or stories in miniature. There's one that catches your attention. It's completely empty. No flower, no stem, just a name carved in careful, almost reverent script. Why nothing here, you ask? The elder stares for a long moment. Because some dreams are too sacred to show, even to themselves. You look around and realize this is not a graveyard, it's a library. Each dish a sentence in an unfinished book. Each petal a comma in a prayer that didn't quite land. And yet, they're all kept. You think of how many things you've forgotten, how many moments you dismissed because they didn't become something useful or shareable, how many times you gave up on a bloom because it didn't arrive on your schedule. You sit with that. Then you notice something. Along the back wall, there's a tiny patch of fresh soil, new, untouched. You point to it. The elder smiles. That's for you. Your mouth goes dry. But I haven't failed yet, he shrugs. Maybe not, or maybe you already have. Either way, when you're ready, you'll know what to place there. You nod slowly. You don't feel sad. You feel invited. This isn't about giving up. It's about honoring what couldn't grow, because maybe, just maybe, the gods need reminders not just of beauty, but of effort. Of tryings, of not yets. You stand, bow slightly toward the empty clay dishes, and step out into the sunlight again. The world feels different now, not because it's changed, but because you've remembered the parts that don't bloom, still matter. Outside the house of forgotten blooming, the air is warmer, as though the garden is gently encouraging you forward, no longer whispering, but humming in low, steady reassurance. The elder says nothing, and for a while, you walk side by side, in companionable silence. You reach a clearing where the ground is covered not in grass or soil, but in layers of woven mats, old and sun-faded, arranged in a spiral. In the center, a single low stone bench, barely more than a seat carved from the earth itself. This, the elder says quietly, is where the gods come to listen. You glance around. To what? To us, he replies, though not always in words. He gestures for you to sit. You do. The mat beneath you is scratchy but warm, still holding the sun's memory. He sits across from you, cross-legged, eyes closed. The wind rustles through the leaves. Somewhere nearby, a bird calls once, then falls silent again. You wait, and then something strange happens. You feel the garden listening, not just watching, not just noticing, but listening. As though everything around you, the vines, the trees, even the earth beneath you, is leaning in slightly like a friend during a long story. You take a breath to speak, but the elder raises a finger. Not yet. Let it come. You let your breath go, and then he begins. Not a chant, not a prayer. Just a sound, a low hum, like the first note of a song the world forgot it knew. It's not loud, not melodic, but it vibrates in the space between you, a resonance older than language. You close your eyes, and then, impossibly, you begin to hear more than sound. You hear the splash of something dropped into deep water. You hear laughter, but distant, as if remembered by the garden, not made by mouths. You hear crying, too, gentle, unashamed, and underneath it all, a steady beat, like footsteps, or heartbeats, or drums played by roots under the soil. "This is where we bring stories that cannot be spoken," the elder says softly, breaking the hum. "Where our bodies can say what our mouths can't." You open your eyes. But how do the gods understand? He opens his eyes too. Because they once made this garden to feel, not to hear. You're quiet for a long while. The breeze picks up and a few petals drift across the mat, curling in lazy circles before settling at your feet. You don't brush them away. "Do people still come here?" you ask. He nods. "Some, fewer each season. Most forget how to be quiet long enough to hear their own thoughts." You tilt your head. "And what happens if someone brings a lie here?" He looks at you seriously. It blooms in silence, then wilts within the hour. You stare at the spiral of mats, the patient bench, the expectant trees. This is a place not for noise, but for honesty. Not the loud public kind, but the kind that creeps in late at night when your phone is off and your memory has started telling stories you didn't authorize. He stands slowly and brushes his hands on his robe. "Let it grow here," he says, "whatever it is." You nod, and for the first time in a long while you close your eyes, not to escape but to root, and deep in the soil around you, something shifts, something very old, not waking, not sleeping, just listening, just like you. You leave the spiral of mats with a strange clarity buzzing behind your eyes, like the static that lingers after a powerful dream. The elder doesn't say where you're going next, but his pace quickens, not rushed, eager, as if the next part of the garden isn't just a place but a reveal. The air thickens with the scent of sweetness, not perfumed or artificial, but the rich, heady aroma of something wild in bloom. You catch hints of sap, crushed nectar, and something faintly metallic, like iron left in the rain. You round a final bend and stop. This part of the garden is glowing. You blink, because it must be a trick of the light, but no. The flowers here glow, not with fire, not with heat, but with a pale bioluminescence that pulses in rhythm, like breath. "These," the elder says reverently, "are the Tequixochitl, the emperor's flowers, the rarest blooms in the entire garden, and the most dangerous." You glance around. The plants rise in elegant spirals, their petals long and translucent, fluttering with a grace that seems too purposeful for mere wind. The light from them is soft blue-white, and it seems to brush against your skin like ghost fingers. "What do they do?" you ask. He takes a long pause. "They remember power, and how it feels to fall asleep holding it." You step carefully along a stone path that winds through them. Each flower seems to track you, their centers facing you like unblinking eyes. But there's no menace, just attention. These flowers are awake. He tells you that the Tequixochitl were once cultivated by royal dreamers, emperors and their chosen oracles, who believed that sleep was a form of rule. That within their dreams, they shaped the will of the gods, and that these flowers helped anchor those dreams to the waking world. "Like spiritual Wi-Fi?" you ask, half joking. The elder chuckles. "Only less reliable." He picks one of the blooms carefully and shows you the stem. It's hollow, filled with a milky sap that glows faintly in the shadows. "This," he says, "was painted on the eyelids of the emperor before sleep. Not to bring rest, but to summon the dreams of empire." You stare. "They used it like a portal or a trap," he says, "depending on the dream. There are stories, rare, whispered, of rulers who entered dreams through these flowers and never came back, not dead, just lost, wandering the divine subconscious like ghosts in a temple. And occasionally the garden remembers them." You look around suddenly, heart quickening. "Are they in here now?" He nods once. "Sometimes, when the moon is thin, you can hear them muttering in Nahuatl, old words, unfinished orders, lullabies to gods no one worships anymore. A breeze passes, and the flowers sway all at once. You feel it in your chest, the tug of ambition, of pride, of reaching for something bigger than your own name. You touch one of the petals. It's impossibly soft, like a sigh wrapped in silk. Your fingers tingle, not painfully, just knowingly. Like the flower has read your resume and is considering your application. What happens if someone unworthy dreams through it, you ask? The elder raises a brow. That's how you get war. You blink. Literal war. Or worse, he says, a god who dreams of you. You step back, because suddenly the glow doesn't feel so gentle. It feels like a spotlight, and you're standing on a stage you didn't audition for. The elder seems to sense your discomfort. Most who come here never touch the flowers. Fewer still offer their sleep to them. You nod slowly. Do you want to try? He asks. You think hard, then shake your head. Not yet. He smiles. Then you're wiser than most emperors. The Tequixochitl sway again, almost approvingly. As you turn to leave, one petal detaches and drifts toward you. You catch it reflexively. It doesn't glow anymore, it's gone still. But something in its weight tells you it remembers being powerful. You tuck it in your pocket, not as a souvenir, but as a reminder, because even dreams must be handled with care, especially the ones that glow. The glowing garden fades behind you as you move deeper into the shaded corridors of the landscape, where sunlight filters only in patches, like forgotten thoughts slipping through closed eyelids. The elder walks slower now, not because he is tired, but because where you're headed demands patience. He stops before a stone arch almost entirely swallowed by creeping vines, thick and knotted like braids left untouched for centuries. Without a word, he begins to part the greenery with his hands. A path is revealed, dark, narrow, and humming with a low, barely there resonance, like the sound you hear in your chest just before thunder. This, he says, is the path to the Amate Codex Garden. You've heard that word before. Amate, bark paper, sacred scrolls, the stuff of royal decrees and dream records. But a garden? You step inside, ducking slightly as the ceiling of vines arches above you like the inside of a throat. After a short walk, the space opens again and it takes your breath. The garden is unlike anything you've seen. Instead of petals or branches, the plants here have leaves like parchment, thin, delicate, marked with faint symbols and lines of faded script. They sway gently, and as they do, their surfaces shimmer with writing, not ink but etched light. They're not just plants, the elder says. They're pages. You reach toward one. As your fingers hover near, the letters change, shifting like fish beneath clear water. The symbols rearrange themselves, forming something close to meaning but never settling. Your thoughts feel strangely loud. They're reading you, the elder says, deciding which part of your memory is worth copying. You look around. The garden is filled with these script leaves, fluttering quietly, as if whispering to each other. Some glow faintly, others are dark, dormant. You wonder how many people have stood here and how many of their thoughts now live in these botanical books. The Amate Codex Garden, he says, was grown, not written. Each of these plants sprouted from dreams recorded and buried in bark. The knowledge wasn't pressed into them, it blossomed. You bend down and examine a smaller plant, its leaves trembling, nervous almost. The markings are simple. Spirals, stick figures, a few smudges of red. That one, the elder murmurs, was planted by a child. She dreamed of a jaguar who taught her how to fish with a bone needle. The elders said it was nonsense, but the garden kept it anyway. You smile. So this is where nonsense is sacred, he nods, where memory becomes myth, and myth returns to memory. He walks ahead and gestures toward a vine-wrapped trellis. On it hangs a single long leaf wide as your chest, covered in glyphs that pulse with slow light. This one is different. It feels heavy even from a distance. This was the last codex to grow, the elder says. It records the dream of a gardener who tried to teach a god to forget. You look up sharply. Forget what? Themselves. You move closer. The leaf hums faintly as your presence disturbs its rest. A few symbols flicker like fireflies trapped under glass. You can't read them, but you feel their intent. Guilt, longing, an apology. Did it work? No, he says. But the god dreamed of silence for 3 nights, and the rains came back. You both stand there, listening to the wind shift through the parchment garden, making soft rustling noises like pages turning themselves. Some historians claim this garden is metaphor, a poetic rendering of oral storytelling traditions, transformed into botany by overly enthusiastic mystics. Others say it's simply hallucinatory nonsense, a fever dream for those who took too much fermented cactus. But you're here, and the leaves are writing you. You touch one, lightly, and it responds, a name. Not yours exactly, but close. A feeling, a moment from childhood you haven't thought of in 20 years, the smell of wet stone, a lantern, a hand letting go of yours in a crowd. You flinch, but the leaf is calm. Do they keep everything? You ask? No, he says, only what's unfinished. You walk slowly, deeper into the garden of living memory. Each plant hums in its own tone, like a choir tuned to loss and wonder. As you move, you begin to understand. The Aztecs didn't fear forgetting. They feared unwitnessed memory. And so they grew gardens like this, not to archive facts, but to let emotion root itself into the earth, and now see part of you is rooted too. You turn back once. The leaves do not wave, but you know you've been added to the story. Somewhere in that garden, a line of script now belongs to you. The wind feels different as you step out of the Amate Codex garden. Not stronger, emptier, like something has been taken from you gently, with care. You don't feel loss, you feel lighter, as if a burden you didn't know you were carrying has been copied, stored, and tucked away in a leaf. The elder walks ahead in silence. You follow, but the garden seems to slow your feet. It's as though the plants have become denser, the air thicker with the scent of time and sun-warmed bark. This part of the garden feels older, not grander, closer. Finally, he stops before a cluster of trees bent inward in a perfect circle, their trunks twisted like woven ropes. He parts two low branches and gestures for you to enter. This is the circle of the sleeping roots. The clearing is simple. No flowers, no vines, just earth, soft, black, and utterly still. You step in and feel it immediately, the hum beneath your feet. Everything begins here, the elder says. Even the gods. You raise an eyebrow. Here? He nods. Before there were temples, before there were names for stars or blood or love, there were roots, and they slept. You kneel. The soil is warm, not from sun, but from memory. Deep memory. Ancient, circular, unfinished. He sits across from you, eyes soft. This is not a place for asking. It's a place for letting go. You don't know what you're holding until you do. Thoughts you've carried for years, quiet and small and half-formed, questions without answers, regrets that never became confessions. They begin to rise, not all at once, but like vapor lifting. Half-wet stone. You speak none of them, you don't have to. The roots below listen. They say this place hears the dreams that haven't happened yet, the elder whispers. It prepares the soil. He closes his eyes and begins to hum, not like before. This is lower, slower, a lullaby for the bones of the world. You close your eyes too, and suddenly you feel the roots beneath you, not just physically but emotionally. They stretch in all directions, slow and thick and unhurried. They are dreaming of light, of rain, of you. And then faintly a sensation rises, not from the ground but from within. You are not the first to kneel here, and you won't be the last. Others have come, gardeners, priests, lovers, children, all of them with their own tangled inner growths, hopes, secrets, old joys that refuse to die. They laid them here, not to bury, to root. You open your eyes. The elder is watching you. He smiles gently. You heard it, didn't you? You nod. I think so. He leans forward, brushing some soil with his fingers. The gods used to sleep right here, not in palaces, not in the sky, but beneath our feet. They didn't want to be worshipped. They wanted to dream with us. You feel something tighten in your chest. Not sadness, something older. Reverence, recognition. He stands slowly. This is where the garden ends. You look around. There's nothing here. Exactly, he says, because what grows here is what comes next. You crouch once. More, press your palm to the warm soil and let a quiet breath escape your body. Not as an offering, as a promise. You'll dream carefully now. You'll plant things on purpose, and you'll remember that roots don't need sunlight to know where. They're going only stillness and time. The wind feels different as you step out of the Amate Codex garden. Not stronger, emptier, like something has been taken from you gently, with care. You don't feel loss. You feel lighter, as if a burden you didn't know you were carrying has been copied, stored, and tucked away in a leaf. The elder walks ahead in silence. You follow, but the garden seems to slow your feet. It's as though the plants have become denser, the air thicker with the scent of time and sun-warmed bark. This part of the garden feels older, not grander, closer. Finally, he stops before a cluster of trees bent inward in a perfect circle, their trunks twisted like woven ropes. He parts two low branches and gestures for you to enter. This is the circle of the sleeping roots. The clearing is simple. No flowers, no vines, just earth. Soft, black, and utterly still. You step in and feel it immediately, the hum beneath your feet. Everything begins here, the elder says. Even the gods. You raise an eyebrow. Here? He nods. Before there were temples, before there were names for stars or blood or love, there were roots, and they slept. You kneel. The soil is warm, not from sun, but from memory. Deep memory. Ancient, circular, unfinished. He sits across from you, eyes soft. This is not a place for asking, it's a place for letting go. You don't know what you're holding, until you do. Thoughts you've carried for years, quiet and small and half-formed, questions without answers, regrets that never became confessions. They begin to rise, not all at once, but like vapor lifting. Off whetstone. You speak none of them, you don't have to, the roots below listen. They say this place hears the dreams that haven't happened yet, the elder whispers. It prepares the soil. He closes his eyes and begins to hum. Not like before, this is lower, slower. A lullaby for the bones of the world. You close your eyes too, and suddenly you feel the roots beneath you, not just physically, but emotionally. They stretch in all directions, slow and thick and unhurried. They are dreaming of light, of rain, of you. And then faintly a sensation rises, not from the ground, but from within. You are not the first to kneel here, and you won't be the last. Others have come. Gardeners, priests, lovers, children, all of them with their own tangled inner. Growths, hopes, secrets, old joys that refuse to die. They laid them here, not to bury, to root. You open your eyes. The elder is watching you. He smiles gently. You heard it, didn't you? You nod. I think so. He leans forward, brushing some soil with his fingers. The gods used to sleep right here, not in palaces, not in the sky, but beneath our feet. They didn't want to be worshipped. They wanted to dream with us. You feel something tighten in your chest. Not sadness, something older, reverence, recognition. He stands slowly. This is where the garden ends. You look around. There's nothing here. Exactly, he says, because what grows here is what comes next. You crouch once. More, press your palm to the warm soil and let a quiet breath escape your body. Not as an offering, as a promise. You'll dream carefully now. You'll plant things on purpose, and you'll remember that roots don't need sunlight to know where. They're going only stillness and time.